right, guys, we're back for round 2 with Jim Emerich. Jim, tell everyone a little bit about yourself who didn't listen yesterday and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, first round was amazing. Looking forward to round 2. My name is Jim Emerich. I'm the founder of Backbone CFO. Backbone CFO is a fully remote, virtual, fractional CFO firm. And our mission, our purpose is to partner with entrepreneurs to help them unlock their 10x growth so that they can fulfill their purpose and passion. So that's a little bit about what we do and who we are.
Amazing. And I didn't ask this yesterday, but I'm curious about it. You actually said yourself, you're like, I'm a terrible accountant, or I'm not a great accountant, but I'm a great entrepreneur first. And that prompted a question for me that I didn't ask yesterday. And that was, Jim, how did you become a fractional CFO? Like, what got you passionate about this particular career path? What did you study? What did you train under? And why are you here now?
Yeah, that's great. So kind of accidentally fell into this space, but let me backtrack before that. So I spent quite a few years in manufacturing. I'm a certified management accountant although I think that's pretty meaningless at this point, but it's fun. It's, some letters.
I know what it is, and it's very respectable. It's just doesn't have the publicity that the CPA does.
Yeah, correct. So anyway, that's what it is. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time in manufacturing, engineering service, some nonprofit, and banking. But, it's interesting. It was right around the pandemic, 2020. So I live in South Jersey, so Southern New Jersey, about 15 minutes east of Philadelphia, to give the listeners context. But in this area, a lot of trades, a lot of blue collar, manufacturing, construction, that kind of thing. So I was an in-house CFO for a manufacturing firm, but I would constantly be hit up by my friends who run a landscaping company, or they run one guy was running an artificial turf, and he was an artificial turf installer. Another guy had a garden center, and they would just be like, Jim, I need help with QuickBooks, or I want to get a loan, but I have no idea how to do that. Can you help me with, trying to find some financing? And I'm helping, right? Sure, I can help you do that. No problem. Maybe a $500,000 line of credit, something like this, to get it at a local bank. And then it became like, hey, can you do my books? No, I can't do your books. I have a full-time job, and then the entrepreneurial me was like, I could hire somebody to do their books, so that happened. And then 3 weeks later, I had 2 clients lined up, and I pinged one of my former staff accountants that worked for me as an in-house staff accountant. He's a young guy. I said, hey, can you moonlight for me? I got a couple clients lined up. They want some bookkeeping work done. I can't do it, but would you like to do it? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. He was in his early 20s. So that all of a sudden happened. And then I had him working 20 hours a week within a month. And then another client or prospect approached me and asked the same thing. So I said, hang on, give me a day. I went back to, his name was Matt. I went back to Matt. I said, Matt, you need to quit your job, and I need you to work full-time for me. He said, but Jim, you don't even work full-time for yourself. I said, I know, but you need to work full-time. So he quit his job, and then I picked up that third client, and all of a sudden, Backbone CFO, wasn't called that at the time, was born, and we were doing outsourced accounting work. And then all of a sudden I realized, well, I can help them on the consulting piece as well. So I started doing some of that. And all of a sudden I had this little business going as I was at the time as a VP of finance, actually, for a global manufacturer. And my wife approached me at one point and said, hey, can you stop working 2 full-time jobs now? And I said, I think so. It's time. So for me, it was a real faith journey. And I said, you know what? It's time to trust God, and I'm going to just go for it. I gave my employer notice in October of 2021. They, in turn, I was just going to quit. They said, please work to the end of the year. So I did that. And then they said, please consult for us. So I did that. And that kind of bridged the gap between me being an in-house VP of finance to starting this company. And 2.5 years later, here we are.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I have a very similar story from leaving corporate, where it's that transition of can we stop working 2 full-time jobs now?
Yeah.
This is getting a little ridiculous.
I used to joke with people, I would work what I would say half days for about 2 years. Yeah. Half the day for 2 years straight. And it was grueling, right? So I know there's a lot of folks out in your audience can relate to a busy season, but this wasn't a season. This was a busy couple of years.
It was a lifestyle. It turns into a whole routine and a lifestyle. And I can't believe I got through that. I just kind of feel like I blacked out. I'm just I don't remember most of that time. I was between 2 laptops at the same desk, going between the 2 every half hour. And it stresses your mind out. So it burns so many brain calories trying to remember who you're talking to.
That's right.
I completely relate to that. But you brought up something when you were talking about that with your client about like opening up a line of credit and helping them with their goals. And I know that probably sparked something, but this is something a lot of businesses struggle with. Can we talk about some of the things that you were doing with clients now and before to help them sort of like, what are some of the problems that they were approaching you with, the itches that needed to be scratched, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I think it's not uncommon to any business. I know I remember when I was in an in-house CFO for, again, a $40 million manufacturing company. Guess what we did once a week? My controller and I did a 13-week rolling cash flow forecast. It was like you woke up, you ate breakfast, you did a cash flow forecast. It was like that was just what you did. And then I get out of that environment and I go in a small business dealing with, again, similar to your audience here, just businesses doing maybe $1 million, $2 million a year in sales. And I would meet with them and say, hey, tell me about your cash flow. And they're like, they would tell me about the job they're about to finish today. I said, no, like your cash flow from a business perspective. Like, do you have a cash flow plan? What's your receivables looking like? How about payables? What are payables? So it's like really basic stuff. And I think from a tactical perspective, I learned very quickly, like, wow, just building out a 13-week cash flow model for somebody is a home run, right? Like this is stuff that most businesses that I see don't do. And listen, if you're in a business where you don't need that, right? There's enough sufficient cash flow and there's enough margin where you don't have to know where every dollar's going, then good for you. But for most folks, and I would probably argue that you still need it on a strategic level, but that aside, most folks need something where they're actually planning out some kind of cash flow. And I've really just started building out simple cash in, cash out, right? And then what's the difference? And then, a mentor of mine used to tell me, like, money has the ability to grow wings and fly away. So if you don't know where it's going to go somewhere, right? So for us, it just was a very simple, like, well, let's help business owners just know, like, let's just create visibility first before I tell them, go get a line of credit, or you should have a sweep account, or you should have, well, let's just figure out where the money's at first. And like, let's trace it.
Yeah. But I think that's a big struggle for a lot of business owners who haven't had that visibility before. They sometimes don't even want to look at it and they don't want to know. Yeah. Or cause they're afraid of what it's going to tell them. But at the same time, I feel like you said, what's the phrase I use? It's like, if you don't assign a purpose to the dollars, one will be assigned for it. Like it will find its way to a purpose. But if you don't intentionally set where it's going, then it will go somewhere else. And it will not be in alignment with your goal. It will be in alignment with your intuition, your emotion, your spontaneity.
Well, and Shannon, what I
that's
found
exactly it.
Is that entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs for a reason. They have an incredible knack for being able to make it work.
Yes.
Right. And that is great. It's also a detriment. Right. So I've talked to so many entrepreneurs because, I don't need I'm just going to sell another job next week and I'll make it work. I'm like, man, that's awesome. You're going to sell another job and make it work. But what if we just really dialed it in and you kept selling also? And then we actually took that margin you had and we're actually like either reinvesting into the business, maybe pay down some of your debt so your cash flow in the long run is better off. Or maybe it's go acquire a business, or maybe you just need to actually make more money and take some distributions for once, right? Like, but have a plan, right? Instead of just, oh my gosh, I'm struggling right now. I got to go sell again. Yeah. And I think that's also a lot of default answer position for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I think part of it, to your point, is like, you have to feel the symptom of the decisions they're making, right? Because if they don't feel like, I could just make it work because they've made it work before. Yep. One day it won't work. Or one day we'll be bumped up against that timeline where something out of your control happens and it increases the fragility of your business.
I would even argue that the worst thing that could happen is that it does work for the next 30 years, but it's never you leave on the table what it always could be. Right. So I see so many entrepreneurs bumping along, right? I'm making it work. I've been in business for 10 years, never been out of business, never missed payroll. If you're raising your hand and saying that as your achievement, I would just tell you, man, you've taken way too much risk to have a shitty job. I have to be honest with you, right? Like that's really what it is. But if you want to be an entrepreneur and take advantage of all that could be, all the potential that your business has, then you need to become strategic. And that's a totally different mindset. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs leave that on the table.
Yeah, because I think that people will measure, I'm doing well by I have cash in the bank. right? Yeah. As a simple metric. And I say that equates to, I am healthy because I weigh X on the scale.
Yep.
And that's not health. That's one metric in a point in time. So let's talk about what can they be managing? What should they be looking at? And what are some of the indicators they should use in order to help them get to that like 10X mindset?
Yeah. Well, I think it has to start with goals. I think, and I know that sounds silly because it's like, really, we're going down that path again. It's like create a vision statement.
They've heard it from me before, let me tell you.
I know. And you've heard it from everybody. And even as a business owner, or somebody who literally started their business by accident, it really starts there, because if you don't have any goals, like if you don't have a target, you're not going to hit it, right? I mean, you're going to hit something. It's just not going to be that. So, I mean, I think it really does have to start there, but I'm going to get off that horse because I know your listeners have heard it. Once you have your goal, you have your target, you know where you're going. I think some really simple tactical things that your audience should be doing as an entrepreneur is having a weekly cash flow plan. I really think it's important. I know it's fundamental, but have a simple cash inflow, cash outflow, which, by the way, we have a free resource. We should give that to your listeners as well. Cash inflow, cash outflow. What's the difference? What's carrying over to the next week, right? I mean, it's not hard, but here's what will happen if you do it. You will be forced to see the ugly. You'll be forced. If you're being honest with yourself, you're going to be forced. And here's the better part. When you see the opportunity and it's 8 weeks in advance, you can plan for it now, right? And I think that's a huge mindset shift for so many entrepreneurs. It's like, and I hear this all the time, I want to buy the business. I want to hire the general manager. I want to invest into marketing, all these things, but I don't think that I can. I don't have the cash flow. And then I'll ask the question, what's your cash flow gap? How much more do you need? What kind of profitability, what kind of margins do you actually need? Oh, just more, better. You get answers like that. I need more, better things. No, like, what's the gap? What can we cut? What can we increase so that you can expedite hiring that person or expedite getting that marketing program in place? Because maybe those things will get you to your, again, the target or goals that you set for. But if you don't have the visibility in cash flow, then it's going to be really difficult to make those decisions consistently, right? And having it being data driven. So I would say cash flow forecast would be a starting point for me.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. And it's about what the idea I use is like eat what you kill. So like have you have a massive monthly burn in your business? Like you're spending a lot of money on contractors, employees, on resources, software, subscriptions, whatever. I say, that's cool. If all that's essential to you and all of that, especially if there's some variable costs that depend on sales, like commissions and such, I'm like, that makes sense. But how much do you then have to sell to overcome that burn and build a cash reserve and all these other goals, right? Yeah. And people, they think about like the survival of like the calories in, calories out, dollars in, dollars out. And it's like, as long as it's positive at the end, I'm doing great. And I say, sometimes, yes, like positive cash flow is good, but in isolation, I understand that, but you've got other goals. You want to be able to say yes to more things. One thing entrepreneurs are great at is identifying opportunities and wanting to say yes to them. Yeah. And I always have to convince them of like, a yes to one thing might be a no to something else. Are you okay with that? Here's the impact of that cash flow decision. You're going to have to wait 2 more months to hire Sally if you do this, right? It's turning that into tactical decisions and the understanding the impact of those decisions. Do you agree?
That's right. And I would say too, like, think of, one thing I see all the time, and I believe 100% in this growth strategy, which is acquisitions, right?
Yes.
Okay. I've been through many acquisitions, both as an internal CFO and with our clients. I've never seen an acquisition just come out of the blue and happen tomorrow, ever. Not one time. It takes, in many cases, if not many months, years, right? So what does that mean? That means that if you're listening right now and you at all think that you have the opportunity to potentially grow through acquisition, you have the ability to plan now, right? Plan now, start now. You might not even know the company. You don't know the industry. You don't know the person. You don't know how much it costs. I don't care, right? Start now. So that means, well, Jim, how do you start now? Well, first of all, you're going to need some kind of capital to get to that acquisition, right? It's not going to be free, right? So why don't we throw a number on the board? I don't care what it is, $2 million. How am I going to finance it, right? How am I going to capitalize it? right? Who do I need to help me get those things in place, right? And start to build out a cash flow model and say, okay, if I had to take on debt service right now, today, of 10 grand a month, how am I going to do it? Can I do it? Right? Or no, I can't do it, but I could do it if I did X, Y, and Z, right? If you just start planning out, and I'm sure your listeners have heard this before, with your cash flow forecasting, any kind of projections you're doing, you don't have to be 100% correct, right? That 80 to 90% interval or confidence level, like, to me, that's great, right? We're just moving in the right direction. And for me, that's so important. And I would tell you, like, this is like shameless plug, like, this is where you need a fractional CFO. If you're doing this alone, I would almost guarantee you're going to fail, and not because you're not capable, not because you're not competent, not because you're not an entrepreneur, but because you don't have time or capacity, because you're already growing, hopefully, a quickly growing business, right? And you're already going down that one path. So we went down the acquisition track a little bit. My point in saying all that was, you said entrepreneurs have a knack for identifying opportunity. I agree with you. Most of the opportunity that will pay significant dividends, you can plan for it.
Exactly. And it's not always like the thing that just pops up and seems like a, striking of gold. It's like the thing that is methodical and intentional. And what's interesting too, because you brought this up yesterday with the network as well, is I also tell entrepreneurs, I go, yes, you are capable, you are competent, you know your business, but you have so many other things to spend your focus and time on, that why not bring in the specialist who's literally been eating, breathing, sleeping, drinking this for years and has done it with other businesses. Yep. So it's also that idea that we say with like the tax pros and the accountants saying, hey, I'm going to call in a specialist to help me and assemble the Avengers, right? Not Captain America by himself.
That's right.
We have to bring in the group to see, okay, here's what we're going to do for the client.
That's right.
Similarly, I think entrepreneurs also feel this compelling need to be the sole leader, the sole executive, the sole decision maker. And I want to alleviate that from them as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, and that's it. There's a distinction, I think, in being the visionary of the company and bearing the weight of every decision, of every strategic plan, of all the things that go into those, right? You can be the visionary, you can be the CEO, the founder, the leader, right? But I would say, just from my experience, and certainly with working with our clients that are at the top of their game, they are surrounding themselves with the best of the best. And it's very smart. I keep this book on my desk, and I bring it up in almost every sales call, because I'm just an absolute believer in this. There's a book, Who Not How, by Dan Sullivan.
Oh, love it.
Right. You've probably read the book, and I would just encourage your listeners, if they haven't read it, to read this book. But it's dramatically changed my life, for sure, as an entrepreneur and as an advisor. But it's also changed the lives of how we've kind of implemented some of these principles with our clients, because we don't want our clients to feel like they have to own and bear the weight of all that comes with owning and running their business, right? It's enough that you're the visionary, especially if you're successful, right? There's a lot of burden that comes with, and you can't get rid of all of it. But what you can do is surround yourself with people that will help you carry that load, and you will go so much further, so much faster, with a heck of a lot less stress and anxiety, right? I get so many business owners that call me, especially like on the prospecting side, like, it'll be the first sales call. What's your problem? I can't sleep. My wife and I are in massive arguments because of cash flow, right? These are like, this has nothing to do with the business. That we're not talking about, Sally isn't showing up for work on time. We're talking about things that really matter, right? I can't save for my kids' college. But, we have a dream to have a vacation home, but we need the business to double. These are things that hold a lot of weight in somebody's life, and to try to bear that all yourself, I think, is a massive flaw. And I get it. Like, I think the entrepreneurs, the A types, the high achievers, they gravitate to wanting to be that. But I think that we have to really fight that urge and really surround yourself with a team that's capable of helping you get there.
I totally agree. And you mentioned, so for those who, I know that we've brought this up before, like when you're ready to hire a fractional CFO, tune into yesterday's episode if you want more resources on who you need to hire to help you. But Jim also mentioned in this episode a cash flow forecasting tool, or something to help people if they want to get a head start, maybe by themselves, and start becoming more aware and having that visibility into their cash flow. What was the tool that you were referring to?
Yeah, it's a templated 13-week cash flow forecasting tool. So if you submit that form so it's backbonecfo.com/keep what you earn, fill out the form, we will email that resource to you. It's a Google Sheet. The point is that it is simple. We don't want you to be overwhelmed by it. We want you to use it. then I think there's some instructions. It's pretty simple. But our point there is, again, not only are you not going at it alone, I think it's important to surround yourself with professionals like a tax advisor, like a fractional CFO, right? Those are good things, but then also giving you the tools to help implement some of these things. And maybe you see some gaps, right? Maybe you see a gap in saying, hey, tool's great, really cool, would love it. I don't have the time. I don't have the capacity. I don't even know how to do this, right? I don't know where to begin. That's okay, right? That is completely okay. In fact, my guess is you're probably pretty good at selling. You're probably pretty good at being an entrepreneur, if you're listening to this podcast. So don't feel like you need to know how to do that, right? Maybe you can, maybe you have the capacity, maybe you're just starting out. But if you're approaching that multiple seven-figure business, I'd probably argue, like, don't waste your time. It's probably worth a simple phone call to Backbone CFO or to Shannon or to somebody else to help you, right? I think you're at that point.
Totally agree. And okay, shameless plug because we haven't mentioned it yet. You're hiring, aren't you? You're hiring fractional CFOs. Can we learn more about what you're looking for? And if anyone's listening who is in this profession and wants to learn more and be mentored by you, how they can find out more about this position?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for the plug. So for us, we are growing, right? So I said in this podcast, I'm an entrepreneur first. It's my absolute desire to build out and scale a firm. This is not Jim, the CFO, .com. This is Backbone CFO. This is way beyond me. We have a great team already, but we are expanding. And I'm really looking for somebody, or I should say, we are really looking for somebody who's hungry. Hungry dogs run fast, and we run very fast here. I would say it's one of the most challenging yet rewarding environments for those of you listening who may be tax professionals. Maybe you're in a Big Four environment. Maybe you're an in-house CFO, but looking to get out and do something different, be a little bit more on the front end of things. That's where I was, by the way. I think that I could totally relate to that. This is an incredible environment, but I think for us, we are looking for those who are entrepreneurial in nature, right? We put it in our job description, like, you're very good with uncertainty and ambiguity. Like, you love that. That's amazing. And if you are that person, you're listening and you can crush it on the financing, right? Or the finance side of things. So things like raising senior debt, cash flow forecasts and projections, tax planning, like, these things are like, oh yeah, I wake up and do that stuff. But you are entrepreneurial as well, and you're a good communicator. I'd love to talk to you. I think this is a great environment. I've gone so far as to say in interviews, Shannon, I think you should quit your job and start your own business. I think there's that much work out there that you can do it if you're hungry enough. And if not, maybe you're hungry, but you don't want that much risk. Well, come talk to someone like myself, and I think there's a spot for you.
Amazing. Can they reach out to you on LinkedIn if they're interested?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay,
LinkedIn,
perfect.
Jim Emerich, James Emerich. I forget what my LinkedIn thing is.
One of those.
Yeah.
Guys, find Jim. We're going to have all of his links in the bio and in the show notes anyway, but you definitely reach out to him. If you're a Big Four person, we're talking like it's January. If you know this is your last busy season, or if you know this is the last year-end close you want to have, this is a perfect opportunity for you. So definitely go talk to Jim if you're interested in his position. Jim, thank you so much for jumping on the show for these past couple of days. I've really enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. This is so much fun. Hope I get invited back.
Oh, always.